This podcast is brought to you very proudly from our new property in Victoria. I'm Jenny Langley. I'm sitting with Mark Langley, who is your horse expert to listen to today, who's just going to be talking to us about the common triggers for anxiety in horses. Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better, to provide positive training solutions for a happier horse world for all. So, Mark, when people bring their horses to you for a clinic, what's the main thing that you're trying to fix? Is it anxiety that you often see?
Well, anxiety is the main thing in horses that is causing the problem, but anxiety is not really the problem, it's the stress. So stress is what I would call trapped anxiety in horses, and a lack of alternatives causes horses to build enough anxiety that they are in a constant state of stress, where they're either in a constant state of flight or they're shutting down, shutting out, freezing, gazing, all those things. Anxiety is natural everywhere in horses, in life, in the herd, with people, but it's the flow in, flow out, and when it's not flowing out and they don't have alternatives, that's the biggest problem. So basically the anxiety that's trapping in horses is causing the stress that's causing all those things that I talked about, and they're the biggest problems.
So anxiety is not necessarily a bad thing?
Not at all. Anxiety is a natural thing, and it comes in very small doses or sometimes larger doses, like in a natural herd situation. Back in a time when horses, were a prey animal, then anxiety, just like a zebra would be, there's a stalking lion and we've got to get out of here, creates a lot of anxiety. They seek safety.
So it's stimulation to survive.
It's a stimulation to survive, and they seek safety, and then the anxiety comes down by running away, seeking safety. They have an answer for that anxiety, so the anxiety flows in, and then if they get away from the lion and they finally find a safe place and they're safe again, then the anxiety comes out because of the choice that they made. And it's that choice and availability of being able to do something about it that allows them to reduce that anxiety.
So in a natural environment, they're also able to, in some senses, regulate their anxiety because they're controlling their environment by having that space and that movement, in theory, in unlimited amounts. Anxiety is there naturally in the state. When people have problems in their horses, whether it's chewing the bit or staring off into the distance, not paying them enough attention, or a horse that's not floating very well, or one that's terrified of being in a barn, all those sorts of issues, people don't necessarily actually link it to what you do. What do you link it to?
Well, I mostly link it, a lot of it is a lack of understanding, so understanding is understanding all the things that we are offering through education and stuff. So we cause a lot of stress in horses, but it's also a lot of training, and the way we are around horses can often take away the right to act on their thoughts off them. So it's, taken away the opportunity of seeking safety and softness, or that feeling that they've resolved something in training. So when it comes to, chomping the bit, a lot of the times the horse is chomping the bit because they feel that bit is trapping them and their thoughts are somewhere else. So that starts that process of crunch, 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 crunch. If the horse wasn't thinking, over the horizon, then it wouldn't feel that the reins are trapping it from being where it thinks it needs to be safe, because that horse is somewhat in some flight state or, state of anxiety, that it feels that there's something wrong there, and it could be because it can't understand that pressure of the reins. And, claustrophobia, once the horse goes in a claustrophobic space, it feels that it's in danger in there, and there's no safety in there or place that it can get away from that feeling of being in a cave or, so it's about being able to understand that is a place that is okay, and through graded exposure. But if they've never had that, or if they had a bad experience in a force float or something like that, then they constantly stay in the float without being able to resolve the stress from being in there.
Okay, but all of those issues that I mentioned are caused by high anxiety, isn't that right? So someone might say, oh, horse is chomping on the bit, they're being really naughty, or, but it's not that, it's actually that they're anxious. Isn't that the case?
There's a reason why they started to chomp the bit, and it was because they were holding on to anxiety from some form or another.
Okay, and you mentioned before that safety a few times. So is that a key aspect to determining what behaviour a horse does? Because it's seeking, is it predominantly one of the things that it's mainly wanting.
Yeah, it seeks some form of, it seeks safety or comfort. So comfort would be it's getting very hot and I need to find shade, because the uncomfortable feeling of sun and the heat makes me need to find shade. Safety could be like if we created a stimulant that made it feel a little concerned, moving away from that stimulant would make it feel like it did something about that. And I guess that's why people sort of, put a stick somewhere and the horse moves away from it and they take the pressure away. The horse feels like it did something, but sometimes what happens if the horse feels that the stick's popping up all the time, it's never quite safe. So that's when they hold the anxiety in.
Okay, so let's have a look at this scenario in terms of what is triggering horses. What are the main triggers behind these behaviours that people are trying to avoid? So people can actually start to look out for the common causes of stress. I've got a question that has come through from Kate in Melbourne. She's been watching your video connecting with a Brumby Part 1 helping a fidgety mare. And she said she really liked how you broke down her triggers as feeling isolated. So she wasn't understanding that she could come to you and feeling trapped. She wasn't understanding the reins. So Kate is wondering if, based on some of your other videos too, that feeling chased, not understanding energy, is another common trigger. We'll go to that part first. Is that the case, that feeling chased is a common trigger for problems in horses?
Oh, for sure. So before they have any handling with people, you can get horses that are wild that naturally would be frightened of energy because we're a different species. They may see us as a threat, a predator. So basically our approach towards them with energy would cause them to be quite worried until they trust that we're safe and they connect with us and realise that, that we're okay, and they make that connection, then they can be scared of our energy. But the problem is so much so in training, I see a lot of energy where energy pushes horses away and they get pushed away from that energy, and then it reinforces the fact that energy can be dangerous. Or I should move away from energy. So they spend their whole life looking at energy from people as a bit of a threat. And, so basically, a lot of horses that I get at clinics are scared of energy, but they have been taught to be scared of energy, which is the unfortunate thing because it's been reinforced through training.
Because there are sceptics out there that will say, no, driving pressure doesn't cause a problem at all. People have been doing it forever. That's the standard go-to. Everyone uses it. What on earth are you talking about? What would you say to those people?
Well, I've seen people use driving pressure in a certain way, and there's sometimes that I've sort of, used a little bit of it to sort of, press a horse in a certain situation. But what's the problem with driving pressure is people use it all the time. It's become like I believe it's become like a easy way just to cut a corner and get the horse to do something. You pick up a flag, you move it away from the flag, job done, easy response. But you miss a lot of detail in how a horse responds to following a feel and stuff like that. So directing pressure, if you want to sort of understand just the basic philosophy between directing and driving, directing is when a horse is going towards its thoughts. Driving is when the horse is kind of focused on the pressure, moving away from it like it's a threat. So you can use a stimulant that looks like a driving pressure, but if you give the horse time to search and look away a little bit and search into the direction it's going, and that pressure doesn't keep pushing it, then it just becomes a stimulant to get the horse to search, not I'm getting away from that pressure. But most times what I see in all the problems I see at clinics is people just pick up a flag, pick up their energy, whatever it is, push the horse away from it. The horse gets away from it, creates distance from that thing that made them feel not so good. And because they've created distance from that stimulant that created a negative feeling, they feel that they've, escaped from it for a bit. But then what happens, it reinforces the fact that us coming towards them, or the flag coming towards them, or the stick coming, or the waving rope coming towards them is a threat, and they best move away from it to keep safe. So then they spend their whole life thinking those things could be predatory because they're escaping from it as if they would escape from something in the wild.
So training sessions then become stressful for the horse because it's having to sort of feel that need that it's getting chased, but it's on the end of a rope, can't move away like it would in the wild. So that feeling of trapped comes in, and so the pressure boils. So do you see horses changing their relationship with their human because of these sorts of training that is using the chasing as part of it?
So I see people sometimes trying so hard to make a very good relationship with their horse, but they fall back on, quite often fall back on driving techniques quite often when they're guiding their horses, and they're in this kind of revolving door of trying to make their horse feel good. But then when they operate their horse through groundwork and stuff, the horses get this negative feeling. So the horse goes, yeah, but, I like you, in your pajamas, but when you start to come out to guide me in your sort of horse riding or guiding clothes, I don't like you anymore. And you can't have a Dr. Jekyll, Dr. Hyde relationship with your horse. When you direct a horse and you offer it guidance, it has to have a good feeling, and the horse felt that you did something for it that made it feel better. And what you did helped that horse let go of other negative emotions that maybe the environment caused, or something else that's out of your control. But if you guide a horse properly and they let go of thoughts always about those other things because of your guidance, then you've actually helped them through guidance. But if your guidance is kind of creating a negative feeling all the time, then basically you're just stacking up anxiety, so the rattly truck that drives by worries the horse, and then you go to guide it and it worries it again. So your anxiety stacking all the time, and that's why that anxiety is building up in horses and not releasing, because a lot of times we haven't mastered the art of directing a horse in a way that makes him feel good.
Right, so from the very moment that people are starting their training session with their horse, even though they're not on its back, anxiety is starting to build up, possibly by what they're doing. So let's go back to Kate's question then. She said that she thought another one of the triggers that can lead to anxiety building up is feeling isolated, not understanding that the horse can come to you for help. Can you just explain, do you see that? Is that something that you agree with? And how do you see it? How does it present itself when you see it in horses?
Feeling isolated is, so take a human out of the equation first to work out that feeling of isolation. They also work together. Different horses in the herd take up different responsibilities that another horse maybe can't do. But all in all, the herd works together. It's like a symbiotic sort of thing that seems to work together well. Not all herds work together that well because they just haven't got the right balance, because there never is enough horses. But a horse, sometimes it's maybe it's a horse that the others think are a bit odd, or they don't like it because of certain things. It might get pushed out and away from the other horses. And I've met a lot of horses that are at the bottom of the pecking order that carry a lot of trouble, but they're the ones that feel isolated because they're not really properly welcomed by the other horses, and they're always being poked by the other horses, just like a kid that's bullied at school. So that's that feeling of isolated and nothing to connect to. So you can kind of introvert a lot, or just feel troubled all the time. So when you're with a person and you have that feeling already, then in the person and you feel that person is kind of aggressive in the way they are, or they're not listening to you, they're not letting you kind of communicate with them, or you've already sort of stopped communicating, so you don't know how to communicate with that person, then basically, and if that person drives you and does certain things that make you feel like the horse is pushing you around, then you're going to feel isolated with that person, and there won't be any connection. So every time you go out, basically there's a human with you because that human's guiding you, but you're feeling isolated, so because you have no connection with that person, you don't feel safe with that person, so then you've got to go into this new environment, which is just some war-torn environment in your mind, because you're a horse out in this new environment that you just turned up in because you just popped out of a horse float or trailer, and wow, you're at the show, and you just, you can't connect with the other horses because they're all horses you don't know. You're terrified of horse energy because you're already at the bottom of the pecking order. You're terrified of the people because how you feel, so you're just this one horse in this kind of war-torn environment. So that's that feeling of isolation, all alone with no these problems around you. And that's why horses hit the red line or get really, ballistic at certain events and trail rides and stuff, is because of that isolated feeling.
So not understanding though that a horse can turn to you for help. So that's the human being, that strong sort of replacement of the natural herd. Is that right? Can humans actually do that?
Yeah, humans can provide. Like in training, we try so hard to set our horses up and empower them with all the tools that they need to be able to go through life and process a lot more things and do well at it. But there are times that, having us there to take up some of the load of all those things and have a connection with us, that we've got their back and they've got our back. And that's what starts to happen if we're confident in ourselves and we're confident in this new environment that we've taken the horse to, and the horse has got a connection with us, it feeds off us and our lack of anxiety about the environment that we've taken them into. And technically, if we've taken that horse into a human environment, because it's a human environment, we should be calm and centered because it's our world we've taken them into. And if we're calm and centered and they see us as a leader that they can rely on, then they feel they trust that I'm safe with you, and that connection with us makes them feel like separation anxiety. Well, the horse is not separated if it has a connection with us. It's only separated if it's isolated with us and doesn't have a connection. So then it's looking for its mates over the hill that it left or something like that, because that was the last time it had a connection. But if it connects with us and feels safe with us, then it's more likely to go into a lot of places with us, not feel isolated, and that connection helps them. But if we're dithery-dathery, if we're kind of focused on managing them all the time, and we're always, offering grey instead of black and white, things like that, then the horse is kind of frazzled with us in a new environment, and then, we can't help them more because we're not much of a leader anyway, because we can't even look after ourselves.
Okay. And the second part of my question, not understanding the reins can lead to a feeling of being trapped.
Yep.
Do you see that too?
So entrapment is, basically the objective of a lot of our questions, but if we're talking about the reins now, entrapment in the reins is a horse feeling anxious and not truly understanding the reins. So basically our legs are saying go forward, the horse goes forward, but its thoughts go over the horizon because it still has separation anxiety, or it's just riding, thinking about the last place of safety. And every time we pull on the rein, it's trapping the horse and making that the feet are going in the direction of the rein, but the thoughts are somewhere else. And if the thoughts are in the opposite direction of the rein, then the horse is feeling the reins always pulling against them and making them feel trapped. So, every time the horse goes, I walk over there, the person pulls on the reins and says, you can't walk. But because they never taught the horse the reins properly, or they never held the reins long enough to get a thought change, the horse's thoughts stay forward, but the feet stay still. So then the horse is feeling trapped, ready to go forward. Like it'd be like someone in a cage, knowing that they can't get out the cage, but their mind is over there on freedom, and they spend their time looking outside the cage, hoping one day the door will open. That's where people sort of sometimes get a horse in a gallop, and then all of a sudden the horse feels like the door's open, and then they bolt because they're not trapped. And some people ride their horse in an arena, and the horse knows that arena is trapping them mentally, and the reins are kind of trapping them mentally. But then all of a sudden when they get outside the arena and there's big open space, they wake up. And, how often do I hear people come to clinics and say, oh, my horse is so dull in the arena, but when I take it out, holy cow, it's like it's got heaps of energy. And it's like, well, it's got that feeling of I'm out here, I've got everything to think about, I'm really worried, and I don't have this trap around me that's shutting me down.
Okay, so these triggers then that can lead to anxiety that we need to look out for, I guess they're sort of triggers that lead a horse to do behaviours that we're trying to avoid. Perhaps we should call them common factors that cause stress rather than triggers. You mentioned where the horse is thinking a lot too. Is that what you look for in terms of when you're trying to work out how best to help it? If its thoughts aren't following the rein, if its thoughts aren't on the person, or it's clearly its thoughts are away out down the paddock somewhere, that would be something that you look out for. It's not necessarily a trigger, but it would be a factor perhaps that leads to something. Is that right?
Yeah, one of the biggest, if we're looking at factors to look for with anxiety, one thing that I'm really picking all the time is hyperfocus.
Right.
So when a horse becomes fixated, hyperfocused, or target-based, I say target-based as in a hyperfocused horse is a bit target-based. So there's a saying that I say nowadays when I'm working with horses and trying to get people to understand what thought I'm trying to create in a horse, and it's I want the horse to search into nothing and find something, not look at something. So if you look at horses in general, if you look at a few horses at a clinic when you're guiding them, they're either looking at you, say for instance in groundwork, they're looking at where someone's got a stick in, or someone's, because they've been taught to focus on the person, focus on the stick, focus on the flag, focus on the person. So all they're doing is looking at where the pressure is moving off it, hyper-focusing where the pressure might turn up. But because of that, they've been taught to just target where the focus is coming from and not search a way into nothing. And nothing is basically, if you were to sort of glance somewhere just to see what you see, and as you're glancing, you notice things as you're glancing. Whereas if I was sitting looking at something and then a kangaroo bounced in my peripheral vision, I'd look at the kangaroo. So that if that was to happen, and a lot of horses do that, they're sort of 1 minute they're focused on you, then next minute a horse moves and they focus on that, and then you move and they focus back on you. But they're not looking around, processing things as they unfold. So I see that target focus in horses a lot that carry a lot of stress, and it's because I believe some people have focused on target training through getting them to look where the pressure's coming from all the time, focus on them, and not search and not kind of look around and process as they go. And that's the art of directing a horse's thought. You either get the thought on you and move your horse around and micromanage it, carry it with your energy, or you get them to search. And searching into nothing to find something is essential for softness, and also the ability to process environments and all the things that unfold in front of them, not just target things that they're noticing as they happen.
Okay, so let's just summarise it. So far, I know you don't like this, but if we were to list some core aspects of horses that everyone can identify and look out for, and if they see it, then they need to build their training around to help it. We've got so far the feeling of isolation. So, people need to work on what they're offering to their horses and replace that herd. The feeling of being trapped through not understanding whatever it is that you're using with your horse, hyper-focus and feeling chased. And so obviously you have to offer alternatives that don't make them feel disconnected to you. Is there anything else that you would put on that list of things that you can look out for?
Well, all those things create, I was going to say, the horse that's not searching at all, that just hides away and shuts down because it's very timid, or it's constricted with caution. But all of those things kind of cause that. But, you can look at the overcautious horse that just sort of, hides and doesn't do anything. And that's an indicator if the horse is just shutting down, not searching. That's something you really want to look at. The other thing is just the constant gazing off into the distance, that you look at. But that's just another form of hyper-focus.
And that's the thing, isn't it? There are so many different aspects, so many different layers within each of those that I've just mentioned. And you mentioned two completely other aspects to consider when you're trying to work out what training you should be doing, and that was how much caution and how much curiosity a horse has on finding that right balance. So anyone that's listening that has pricked their ears up about wanting to sort of get the right balance of those things, the yin and yang of curiosity and caution, we do have specific podcasts on that and specific videos on the membership, which you might find quite interesting, because I guess it's nothing is straightforward, is it, Mark? And this is why you don't like lists. You actually have to really look at the horse in a really holistic manner. There's so many different aspects to consider. It's not straightforward. And I just want to highlight someone out there could potentially sort of grasp even some of these concepts and build on them. I'm going to go to a question that's come from Claire in the UK. Maybe you can just briefly help give her some direction on what she should be looking at in order to find a solution and adapt her training to solve this. She has a horse who constantly chomps on his bit, and she says he is not just chomping, he's really going for it. She says he appears relaxed. She is wondering if it's related to anxiety. So again, she's not sure. She's not quite sure what to look out for to correlate the two. She says he is probably an inwardly anxious horse. His teeth are regularly done. She's tried changing the bit, but he still does it. So what should she be looking for to make the right decisions in her training to help him?
First, before I answer the question, can you say, I was really quite interested, she gives it full.
Oh, so this is a British expression, and I had to sort of raise my eyebrows when I read it, because I haven't heard this one for a while. Claire says she has a PRE who constantly chomps on the bit. I don't mean he mouths it, he gives it some welly.
He gives him some welly.
This saying is going to come up in Mark's clinics. It's going to be one of his dad jokes. It's just going to happen.
Some full welly, I like that one.
And everyone's going to go, what are you talking about? But anyway, yeah.
So, I always like hearing the little ways that people explain things. So basically, chomping on the bit, it starts as, because the horse has got a bit of steel in their mouth, and it starts as a sort of an anxiety, but it can be like when you have a trigger, then you do something, people who click pens, or they tap the floor, or they, you get people who, I must admit, I get a bit fidgety even sitting here doing a podcast, because sitting down for a while sort of really, can maybe sort of tap into my ADHD. But with horses, a lot of horses that actually fully grind the bit, they started by not understanding the reins properly, and very quickly there was an anxiety that stayed inside them, and then they crunched, and they went crunched, and then all of a sudden it becomes a habit. So as soon as the bit goes in their mouth. So there are some horses that when they let go of a strong thought and they come back emotionally and they start to trust the reins and follow the reins, they stop chewing. Some horses chew when they're worried and then not chew when they're less worried. Horses, the bit is a trigger to chew and create worry. So if he's got to a stage that the bit has, as soon as the bit goes in, he starts to chew, then it wouldn't have happened had the bit had gone in and he'd learnt to follow the reins and get soft, because he wouldn't start chewing like that if he was soft. So if the bits become a trigger, that's a little bit of a concern, because it's not a huge concern. You can still sort of fix it. But if the bit's the trigger that he just starts to crunch and it's become a habit, then I would start to ride him without a bit for a while. So riding, steering doesn't associate with that crunching and chewing. So you can sort of take one away from the equation. Either way, I would probably take a bit out of his mouth for a while, and I tend to ride in the side pull, and teach the horse to be soft again. And the biggest thing that would have caused the feeling of being, caused him to start chomping, is that the feeling of entrapment and his thoughts being somewhere else. He might seem a bit obedient, he might seem he's okay, but his thoughts are somewhere else, and you probably find he's not following the rein properly with his thoughts. So he's not letting go of an old thought to take on a new thought. When he's going forward, he's probably feeling like a bit like, oh, this is trapping me. So, first thing you can probably do is ride him on a loose rein. Just let him walk around and see if you're not riding him in contact, if he stops chewing or the chewing gets a little better, a little less, I should say. So if you're, say, for instance, if you're riding around in an arena, just let him go on a loose rein and just let him ride. Let him take you where he wants to go. If he gets stuck in a corner, steer him out of the corner and then just drop the reins again, and just let him wander around and just see what he does without you pulling him and pushing him and guiding him for a while, and just see if he just sort of wanders and then goes, oh, right, I've gone towards my thoughts, I don't feel trapped, and he starts to relax his mouth and starts to go, oh, I feel okay, and then stop chewing. And if he carries the bit on a loose rein and starts to kind of stop chewing, and you then pick up the reins and he goes crunch, 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 here comes the entrapment, then you know that that's that contact and guidance in the bit that's making him feel trapped to want to start to chew. So when you do pick up on the reins, you have to hold the reins until you make a thought change. And basically you want to feel the horse. Say, for instance, I'm not going to go through every single sort of steering lesson, but I use a backup as it's a very clear example of a horse thinking forwards or thinking backwards. Okay, so when you pick up two reins, if he's leaning, if he's heavy on his forehand, if he's not backing up correctly, he's out of balance. So every single horse that I've met that chews the bit is out of balance. I've never met a horse in balance. I've never met a horse that's chewing the bit that's kind of feels good and in balance. That they're always, something's out. Their thoughts are out. They're not working. They're not in balance in their body because they're stressed. So basically, if he's backing up, his thoughts are coming back. The first thing you'll see when the thoughts come back is the ears will come back, and you feel that the horse is backing up. So like if you're still leaning on the reins and pulling him back and he's backing with pressure and his body's all stiff and braced, well, he's going to be going, chew, 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 I feel trapped, this thing's dragging me backwards like a log. So you've got to hold the reins long enough, or maybe do it in a way where he feels like you might have to firm up a little bit until he kind of lifts back and says, oh, I might have to back up a little bit, and teach him not to brace, and then loosen up and let him catch up with that feel till he's feeling like he's backing up and the reins are just gently guiding him back, as in the lightest of pressures just guiding him back. and he's thinking backwards. And, you take that push out of him. So as you slow down in the walk, you pick up the feel, he pushes, you hold, get him to back up, and those thoughts have to be coming backwards. And, when you're steering, the thoughts have to be going left, have to be going right. And he's got to be carrying that turn or carrying that back up in his mind. If he's not doing it, then his thoughts are somewhere else, the bit's dragging him in the wrong direction, and he's feeling trapped. And some horses, this is the hard thing for a lot of people, is some horses are learnt to be so light, they're actually slightly avoiding the bit because they're frightened of it, and they're going to chew the bit too. They're going to back up really light, so if you're light in your hand, they're going to turn light. But if you watch closely, they're not looking and softly floating that inside ear into those turns, and they're not engaged in that turn. They're just kind of turning lightly because they're scared of the bit, because the bit's hurt them in the past, and they don't want to lean on the bit or get near the bit because it's frightening. So those horses are going to be chewing too. So you're going to have the leany ones that are chewing, you're going to have the ones that are hiding. I see a lot of horses that have been so bent in the reins, left and right, and bendy, that they're actually bent. You can't feel them in your hands, and people think they're amazing because they feel so light, yet they're chewing the bit and they've got hard square eyes. So because they're not soft, because they're hiding from the bit.
So actually looking for anxiety and looking for where your horse's thoughts are actually two areas that are the key, isn't it, to understanding some of the training?
Yeah.
Because they are related to problem solving and also to understanding the problems in the first place. There is so much involved in people coming on board with assessing horses' needs, isn't there, as opposed to just trying to get them to do things. So, if a horse isn't cooperating, if it isn't doing what you expect it to do, rather than getting frustrated at this particular action, it's a case of actually going, well, hang on a minute, what is going through my horse? What's led it to get to that point? And that's a whole different way of thinking of things, which of course is why you have the slogan, look through a different lens. Is it hard to teach people to do these sorts of things, to come on board with it? Do you find it's challenging?
Oh, well, I just had a fence sitter at this particular clinic that we're running. We're just on our rest day today, and she's fence sitting, and she goes, oh, I've just got to undo everything that I've learnt and do the opposite. And I'm like, well, not everything, but, but she's realising it doesn't matter what country I'm in. I do a clinic, people see very positive change in their horses. So that's the only reason I think sometimes people come on board is because they've seen a change in their horse. But if it wasn't for a change in the horse, some people would walk away going too hard. Every other trainer has told me the opposite of what he's saying. Why should I follow him? And I've had that feeling. I had someone, there was someone sent a feedback through, and she said, oh, I like what you teach, but it contradicts what a lot of tried and true trainers are saying out there, and I think I'm just going to believe the tried and true trainers. And I'm like, well, fair enough. So I'm lucky enough to be able to show people a positive change in their horses. If I couldn't do that at some clinics, and they see and feel the benefits, and when they practice it at home, they come back feeling those benefits, I wouldn't be able to hook them and bring them on board and say, well, I can help you. But they'd probably just not take it's not a bait, it's just more so like, if I couldn't help a horse at a clinic or show that there is a positive in it, then they go, what's the point? Right.
So you're so well, sort of off the normal track of what people expectations are, that they need to have that proof to be able, which is absolutely fair enough. You shouldn't just be doing something just because someone says you should do it. That's half the battle, isn't it, with all the different training programs out there? And people do them because someone else is just saying to do it. But isn't that good that you can actually make those changes on the horses, and you can actually prove your point? And I do know that a lot of feedback comes through from people saying the long-lasting effects of what your training does. It's not a short-term fix; they actually stay with the horse, and so that that's really good. We know it's sort of all helping. So okay, we'll wrap it up at that. I think we've talked for long enough on this subject. I hope it's been helpful to all the listeners out there. Of course, we've got lots of videos online if you want to look at any of these areas in more detail and just see how Mark is doing all this training. But thank you for listening, and we'll be back again next week.
Thanks everyone, and thanks Jenny.
Thanks for listening to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast. This episode is one of hundreds more. So if you are interested in learning all about how Mark trains and changes horses' mindsets, and yes, he really does do that, so that they are more open and willing, listen to another. They are packed with practical insights that everyone can use.